let's see if this works a bit better than on Saturday. So I was wanting to talk about Donald Trump, who came to power as like an anti-war president. He was going to have peace in 24 hours in Ukraine, and there was going to be peace in the Middle East. Oh yeah, no problems at all, absolutely. And for someone who came in on, oh, it's already telling me I've got issues. Hopefully they go away. For someone who came in promising to like make peace, he don't have to pick a lot of fights. Like, I'm going to talk about the latest fight with New York in a moment, but also like just today, he's picking another fight with Iran. So like this, I'll go on to Mamdani in a minute, but let's just think about Iran. So this is actually a really simple situation for him. The way I imagine Donald Trump works is the reason he's anti-war is not because he's a man of peace, but because he's a man of commerce. And war, like, yeah, if you're an arms producer, that's a very profitable time. But for a real estate developer, it's a very unprofitable time because buildings are falling down. So he wants peace because it's more profitable for him personally and for the sort of industries he favours. So with Iran, it's actually really easy. All Iran wants is, first of all, Trump is not ideologically opposed to Iran or anyone else, right? We know that. So he doesn't share the hang-ups of a lot of Republicans. Iran just wants security guarantees, wherever we heard that term before, and it wants better trade. All Trump has to do is make Iran feel that it's not going to get bombed again. That's all they're asking. Iran at the moment is saying, we're not going to continue talks until you guarantee not to bomb the crap out of us again. And Trump's refusing, and it's utterly ridiculous. All he has to do is say, look, we just wanted to put your nuclear program back. I want us to discuss an arrangement whereby you just abandon your nuclear program in return for better trade. Everyone's a winner. It's all he has to do. All he has to do. And he won't even do that. But he's also, so he's picking fights everywhere. Because he thought, like in Ukraine and Russia, he thought because Ukraine were in this weak position, like he said, oh, Ukraine's got no cards, which wasn't true. So he thought he could just bully Ukraine into peace, not realising that there is no such thing as bullying Ukraine into peace, because Ukraine wants peace. It cannot have peace until Russia leaves its territory. It's really that simple. And he didn't understand that. He's maybe starting to understand a little, and yet he's still not prepared to now put pressure on Putin, which he could easily do. Like Mike Graham, Republicans have got a bill ready to go through to apply really what they call our eye-watering sanctions on Russia. But Trump keeps refusing to go along with it. So he's putting zero pressure on Russia. Granted, he's easing the pressure a little bit on Ukraine, but it's still, all he's doing is actually prolonging the war. And because the war will not end until Russia leaves, because the alternative is Ukraine just ceasing to exist, which they're not going to agree to do. And of course, Europe, just beyond what's right and wrong, is not totally in favour of Russia being able to consolidate in Ukraine to then expand somewhere else in Europe and continue to invade Europe until someone decides to stop them. Then we've got at home. So he's actually even starting effectively potentially war at home, because although it might sound insane that a civil war could emerge in America in the modern age, like, you can't rule it out. I mean, let's face it, America is a country where people are encouraged to develop arsenals. Specifically, and what do they always say? Gun nuts. What do they say the purpose of those guns are? Why do they need so many guns? Like, what's wrong with just a pistol and a hunting rifle? Why do they need military grade weapons? They always say, same thing, in case the government overreaches. That's what they say, in case the government overreaches. I'd say the government are overreaching. And like in this country, like, if you convert your garage, most people just put tool, like our next door neighbour, no one really puts a car in a garage these days because garages are actually too small for modern cars. But next door neighbours, it's full of their tools and everything. My wife converted her garage into a second living room. It's what we call the dog's room now. The dogs live there. You know, but in America, they turned their garages into armories. Absolutely insane. So there is a real possibility. And what has he done so far? So first of all, he's literally sent troops into California. So he is actually stoking tensions in California. And now the latest thing with Zoran Mamdani, Trump has now said in an interview that if he said, oh, he can't become mayor because he's a raging communist, right? Can't be done. But he said, but if it happens, then he's going to have to behave himself. Otherwise, New York will get no money. So he's threatening $100 billion, I think, of federal funding. But it's like California, I think, isn't it? Like, so California, the governor of California had already said there's a, you know, if Trump threatens federal funding to California, well, California sends more money to the federal government than the federal government sends back. California is a net contributor to federal finances by some distance. So they said, well, maybe we won't send the taxes then. And then J.D. Vance goes, oh, but that would be illegal. Now, New York, Trump doesn't even have to go as hard on New York. Because I suppose it's because it's his home state, I guess. Obviously, Mamdani is promising higher taxes on the wealthy. He said there shouldn't be such thing as a billionaire, which, you know, I think a lot of people would agree with. But the thing is, like, whereas in California, there's a lot of united objection to what Trump's doing. In New York, you've got to bear in mind, Mamdani is not universally supported by other Democrats in New York. You know, they're fairly split. There are a lot of Democrats who are not totally keen on socialism at all. I mean, it's not communism. Mamdani is not a communist, but he is a socialist. You know, so there's plenty. He would actually have plenty of opposition within his own party in New York. So Trump doesn't really have to go this hard, but it's just like he's just picking fights everywhere. He thinks to himself, well, California doesn't vote Republican, so I can afford to pick a fight with them. New York doesn't vote Republican, so I can afford to pick a fight with them. But he's also picking a fight more universally because his big, beautiful bill is going to screw over even MAGA voters, isn't it? It's going to screw them over. There's going to be, I believe, 12 million Americans losing healthcare as a result. And then you consider there's just more general cuts to the sort of public services that poorer Americans rely on. And who does Trump appeal to? Who are MAGA? Poorer Americans. How did MAGA emerge? Because Americans saw, you know, basically since the days of Reagan and Thatcher in the UK, so basically since the late 70s, they saw themselves getting a worse and worse deal. There was no trickle-down economics. That's Reagan's thing, trickle-down economics. You know, it flooded upwards. It flooded upwards. There was no trickle-down. And people recognise that now things are so bad. You know, the inequality is so bad in America and in the UK, but particularly in America, that people noticed it. And Trump just, you know, went straight into it, didn't he? He said, I'll drain the swamp. He said the Democrats and Republicans are both failing you. I will back you. And he hasn't, of course. He's made things much worse. Anyway, just catch up with a couple of things there. My dad's the only person I know who parks his car in the garage. It's his generation. He must have a small car or a big garage then. Enjoying these live streams, off topic, but do you know why Labour aren't building asylum processing centres in France, which will massively reduce boat crossings? So it's a good question. I don't know for certain, but from what I can piece together, what I think the thinking might be, and it's again just as crazy as all the rest of their thinking. So I think the thinking is this. So if they build processing centres in France, so this is the way it works, right? And this is what I've called for some time. You have a processing centre in France. France are totally cool with that, by the way. We build that there. Then asylum seekers in the north of France go there. They can have the processing there. Sometimes processing takes a while, so you can have initial processing there. If it looks like you've straight away not got a case at all, then they can from there deport you wherever. Because remember, some asylum seekers trying to claim asylum in Britain have already claimed asylum in Europe and been denied, they've failed. So in that particular case, as I understand it, the UK can legally just say, well, you have already claimed asylum and failed. And every country in Europe is a safe country, right? So if you fail your asylum claim in France, you're probably going to fail it in Britain as well. So yeah, they could build a processing centre in France. It would allow them to filter through people fairly quickly. It would mean if there was a boat crossing, because you know how Reform UK say, oh, if they come on the boat, we'll just send them back to France. Well, they can't, because that's invading France, right? France would have something to say about that. Whereas we would, if someone came across on a small boat unauthorised, Border Patrol could then pick them up. We could then take them back to France, because we'd be taking them back to the British processing centre in France, right? And that would actually then cut it out, because you'd first of all create a safe route to claim asylum. Secondly, if anyone did come across, Labour could, promote to the news that we were just taking them straight back again. So no one would be able to claim asylum after making the small boat crossing, right? Easy. Safer for genuine refugees, better for the government. So why aren't they doing it? It's such an obvious solution. So as far as what I can piece together, it seems to be a fear that it would actually encourage more people to claim asylum. In other words, they may have more asylum claims to deal with. Basically, the easier you make it to claim asylum, the more claims you are likely to get, because there's lots of people need asylum. So the fear is that they make the path of least resistance a little bit less resistant. Now, for my money, that is possibly true. It is true that you are probably going to increase the number of asylum claims you get. However, asylum is a very small proportion of our overall immigration numbers. It doesn't really feature. The main issue with immigration are the very visible signs of it, such as asylum accommodation in hotels or wherever. People, Reform UK being able to say, oh, but we're moving out of hotels, but now we're giving housing over to asylum seekers, right? If you did it this way, there'd almost be no such thing as an asylum seeker in Britain. Some would be moved across while their claim is still being processed, but there'd have been initial check to check that they've actually got a decent case first. So you'd massively reduce the number of asylum seekers in Britain. You would very, very swiftly cut out the small boat crossings back to pre-2018 levels when they were next to none. And the fact that it would result in higher numbers of asylum claims, I don't think is a serious issue, because the numbers are small. The numbers are small. I mean, there was some polling done recently, and a lot of Reform UK voters, a good third of them no, it was more than that. Now, the third is about how much of asylum is immigration down to asylum. So they were asked, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were asked, so basically, in terms of, because a lot of people think asylum is a big part of our immigration issue, and it's really not. It's tiny. It's like 2 or 3%. It's like 2.5%, and so a large proportion. I can't remember what it was now. A large proportion of Reform UK supporters think that asylum seekers make up something like about a third of our total immigration, which is absolutely off the charts. That's more than 10 times as much as it really is. But again, it's this misconception, right? And that misconception is driven by the visible signs of asylum. So remove the visible signs of asylum, and all of a sudden, you've got a much easier time of it. So I think the government are getting it wrong. But I think that's their thinking. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's what they're thinking, based on what a few people have said. Anyway. Really enjoying the lives. Not too fond of the banner strip, thanks. Read it. Make sure it's a heat wave today. Just to plug the old climate action issues. Do point. The news today is saying that this is the hottest start to Wimbledon ever. Now, just consider that. It means it's not just hot. It's not just that we've got a heat wave. We've got it earlier than we normally do. There's never been a day one of Wimbledon that's been this hot. And this is the second heat wave we've had this June. Yeah? So we're getting extreme heat earlier, more regularly, and in time, stronger. So, yeah, Richard's there saying hottest June temperature. So, and people die on things like this. I mean, I've done a short for this afternoon on it, but just to explain, just to really get it through to people, because some people think, oh, what's the difference between 30 and 31 degrees? The difference between 30 and 31 degrees is an extra 100 people dying, maybe. And the reason is, like, the way heat kills you is in your body, your chemical reactions are driven by enzymes, which are very temperature sensitive. And if it gets a bit too warm, you know, if your body can't cool down, if you can't keep your body temperature at like 37, your internal body temperature, they start to denature very, very quickly. It only has to go up by a few degrees. Like literally, 37 degrees is what you need your core body temperature to be. 42 degrees, you're dead. You are actually dead. And you can become very seriously ill below 42 degrees. So an extra degree makes all the difference. Is my recording studio hot, Phil? It was okay this morning. I've recorded all my videos for today early. So it was okay. It will be baking hot this afternoon, but I do have an evaporative cooler in there because I am going to do some more reorganising in there. But anyway, Perry there saying thanks for the detailed response. It's as detailed as I can make it. I mean, I'm not 100% certain on it, but I think that's their thinking. I've certainly not heard any better reasoning, and even that is not really good enough. So I take it there'll be no outrage over excess summer deaths. There wasn't even any. No, there won't, by the way. They won't even mention it. But I noticed there wasn't even any outrage over excess winter deaths. There was outrage over the fact that there would be excessive winter deaths, but not over the fact that there were, which suggests to me there probably weren't. At some point, I'm going to find the figure, dig out the figures myself and see. I think that the reason for the winter fuel thing, I mean, yes, it was a bad policy. Let's not make any bones about it. But the reason it was a bad policy is because it was an unpopular policy. It was also bad in some other ways. But I was always conscious of the fact that, see, people were thinking, oh, pensioners are worse off the winter just gone than the winter before, but they actually weren't. They were better off because electricity was 190 odd pounds cheaper in the winter just gone than the winter before. So straight away, people going, oh, I'm losing 200 quid. It's like, well, but your bills are 200 quid less. So they weren't losing it. And pensions had gone up in real terms as well. The state pension had gone up in real terms. So in actual fact, although I emphasise that some pensioners genuinely were screwed over, nonetheless, there wasn't a single pension that was worse off than the previous year. So, yeah. Will, they're saying that there are still people who deny it. Utterly baffles me. It has to be willfully disingenuous at this point, surely. I mean, the thing is, a lot of people don't understand the science of it. And a lot of people get their news, they just graze on news. It's like a buffet. So they just read something. They don't spend a lot of time looking at the news or reading the news or listening to the news every day. And that's fair enough. You know, I spend a lot of time. It is, well, it's now my job, so I do. But, you know, most people can't do that. And a lot of people don't want to do that. And that's understandable. So ultimately, this comes from the media. It is actually really easy to get people to believe completely mad stuff if you just present it in a particular way. You know, so you can say to people, oh, it's not like we didn't have summers before, is it? Do you remember the heat wave of 1976? That was massive, and we were fine then. And people go, oh, yeah. But then you can say to people, but we weren't fine then. Massive numbers of people died. 250 people a day died during that heat wave. 250 people. But also, we had climate change then as well. So that's another problem we've got. Because climate change has only really properly been acknowledged in the last few decades. So if you go back to 1976, a lot of people think, oh, we didn't have climate change there. No, we've had climate change for like over 100 years. And scientists have been warning about it for over 100 years. It's just that it's only now that it's been officially recognised that there hasn't been this muddying of the waters as much, which still exists in some parts of the media. And then you'll get other people going, oh, what's the problem with hotter weather? It'd be brilliant. It's better for our crops, the crops that are catching fire. And we love the heat. It means we don't even have to go away to the Costa del Sol for our holidays. We can just go to like Skegness. And don't worry if you do have to go to Skegness for your holidays. You won't bump into Richard Tice because he'll be in Dubai. Oh, Richard there saying, I passed out yesterday with the heat, only walked for 10 minutes. Normal temperature, I'd go walk 20 miles. Be very careful. I hope you were wearing a hat and everything. My wife yesterday, because she's into crafts now, she makes like fancy soaps and resin ornaments, little curios. So she went to sell some yesterday, not to try and make money, but just to try and recoup and clear some space because the extension downstairs is just full of her creations, right? So she needs to get rid of them. So she went to a fair yesterday to try and sell some of them. And she said it was obviously roasting there, but she was in the inside bit, so it was all right. But she said at one point, someone brought in a dog who was really clearly struggling, like it could barely support itself. She said once it was inside for a bit, it seemed to perk up, but it was clearly struggling with the heat. You know, so people need to be a bit aware of these things. People really need to, particularly in a heat wave, when it's like, when you've got temperatures at like 30 degrees or more, people need to recognise it as a health hazard. That's what I would like the government to do more of in terms of public messaging. People need to consider temperatures above a certain amount, and it may actually be 27 or more, I don't know exactly, but certainly at 30 degrees, you need to consider it a health hazard. You know, just like in the days before we had Clean Air Acts, when smog would literally kill people, people would stay indoors when it was particularly bad with the smog. People need to think about the same things, I think. You really take precautions and stay safe. Stephanie there saying, I spent thousands to insulate my small flat. It's worth every penny. It does keep the temperatures reasonable. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've got with the extension now. So the extension benefits from two things. It's really cool in there. First of all, the windows are on the north side. No, they're not. Hold on, behave yourself. The west side, I should say. So the sun comes over it before it ever gets into the windows. And second, it is really well insulated. This house is not well insulated. So this room I'm in will get incredibly hot today. It's okay at the moment, and the fan is keeping it under control. I obviously vent the heat out overnight. But it's not just that I have got blackout curtains, but they only do so much. Someone suggested to me yesterday maybe I should get some reflective material or something. I might have a look at that, maybe putting up with some command strips. But there's also the computer on. The computer generates a lot of heat. It's why I don't even need in winter. This house is very poorly insulated. But in winter, I don't really need the heater on much in here because the computer, once it's fired up, provides the heat I need. So I only ever, if it's winter and really cold, I'll just like put the heater on for like an hour first thing while the computer warms up. Then it is my heater. Mark there saying, to join late, so I don't know if you've addressed this already, but have you expressed any thoughts about Palestine Action being prescribed as a terrorist group? No, I haven't, but yeah, I'm quite happy to talk about that. So in terms of my views on do I think it's the right thing to do, I honestly don't know. I'll give you what are the pros and cons from my point of view. So first of all, they've reportedly committed tens of millions of pounds of damage to UK national assets, right? Security assets. So they are deliberately trying to make the UK less safe. Their arguments that they're trying to stop genocide doesn't wash because we're not contributing to it at all. We've not used any military assets against Palestinians in any way, shape or form. They're used purely defensively. The most we've done is defend against some attacks on Israel, which is protecting civilians. And we didn't even do that when Iran was attacking them because obviously Israel started that. So their argument doesn't wash. They are arguably literally just trying to damage the UK, right? They're just anti-UK. Second of all, but is that fair to call them terrorists? Because terrorism, and my understanding of terrorism is the use of violence or the threat of violence. It can include threats, not actual violence. The threat or use of violence in order to achieve political aims. Now, they're clearly trying to achieve political aims. But is criminal damage really violence? Well, I would say no. I would say violence implies damage against a person, not property. However, I did look up the rules on prescribing organisations, and it does actually. So in law, in British law, serious criminal damage, also for the purposes of political change, also classes as an act of terrorism. So actually, in law, they could be considered terrorists. It does. Now, I'm not a legal expert, because here's where, it's like, so what counts as serious criminal damage, right? My own personal way of looking at it would say, I would think that actually trying to damage equipment that we use to protect the country would count as serious criminal damage, right? And it is running to tens of millions of pounds. It's taken a jet out of action, right? So, because an engine has actually just been knackered. Tim there saying you're mistaken. The UK is supplying weapons and weapons training to the IDF. It's absolutely not. And you saying covertly means, oh, because this website said so. No, it ain't. If it's covertly, you don't know about it, and we're not. We're absolutely not. So I'm not mistaken. You can believe the Russian-backed media as much as you like. We are not. That is a fact. The government, first thing they did when they came into power was take steps to make sure that we blocked licenses on any equipment that the IDF are using. We haven't blocked. This is what the tankies want. They want us also to stop supplying defensive weapons, ones that are only used in defence, because they want Israeli civilians killed, right? But that's not an issue. That's not harming Palestine. So we've blocked all of that. We've even argued in the ICJ that Israel is breaching international law. British government lawyers are actually arguing in international court that Israel is breaking humanitarian law. There it is. And there's absolutely zero strategic benefit in Britain getting involved in attacking Palestinians. It doesn't help us. It actually harms us. So it's all madness. So the fact of the matter is that the political argument is completely nonsense. So they will, basically what I'm telling you is, if this goes to court, they are not going to win on a defence, because you can damage property if you believe you are stopping a crime. You can do that. So if you, let's say, for example, an organisation is committing crimes. Let's say you've got somewhere that's got animals and they're abusing those animals or something. If you break in to rescue those animals, and you're prosecuted for breaking and entering, you can be acquitted on a defence of you were actually trying to stop a crime, right? But they won't win that argument in court. So the question really is it proportionate? Because for the government to prescribe them, it would have to be proportionate. So again, I'm not a legal expert, you're not asking a lawyer here. But in terms of how I would view it, I would say for it to be proportionate, I think it is valid for the government to do what it can to protect national security assets. So then the question is, was the only way to protect these assets, which this group has targeted many times, by the way, they're clearly going to keep doing it, did they feel that the only way to do it was to prescribe them? Now, the answer may well be yes. The answer may well be yes. But there we go. Tim, whatever you're linking to me, it's not working, mate. It doesn't come up because people can't post links in live streams for obvious reasons. But your link, if it comes from someone like me who's independent, it's not valid, mate. If you cannot find me a official document showing it, it ain't worth anything. And you cannot post links, because otherwise people would try and post. And I know it would be less likely to happen in this case because I only allow subscribers to, members to post. But generally speaking, it is the case you can't post links because people will try and post harmful links, right? Malware and links to things that are illegal and stuff like that. But there we go. Say link to Guardian newspaper and Oxfam. Neither of those have said that US military jets have been bombing Palestinians, mate. None of them have said it at all, because it's a completely mad thing. But anyway, that's my view on it. I can't really add more than that. If it can be considered that they're causing serious criminal damage, which I think it could be argued, then the government are well within their rights to prescribe them. And all I would say is this: if you want to be a protest group, you don't have to attack. A country has a right to protect itself. It has an absolute right to protect itself. This is why, like, when Israel attacked Iran, I'm no friend of Iran. I hate the Iranian regime, and Iran is no friend of Britain, right? Iran is a destabilizing force in the Middle East, right? And yet, although I said that Iran should not have targeted civilian populations in Israel, I uttered not one word of condemnation of the fact that they launched attacks against Israel because they were defending themselves, right? Now, they weren't defending themselves by bombing a hospital, but they were in general defending themselves. A country has a right to defend itself. It's a bit like at the start of this video. Again, you know, I'm ideologically opposed to the Iranian regime, but I said at the start of this video, what Iran reasonably wants is security. What they're asking of America, what they're asking of Trump is guarantee that we're not going to be bombed and we're quite happy to talk deals, right? That's all they're saying, and that's reasonable. Yeah. Do I believe that Iran will act in good faith? Maybe not. But it is still reasonable for them to defend themselves. And it's reasonable for the UK to defend itself and its allies. And that includes defending civilians in Israel. But we haven't even done very much of that. We're mostly there to make sure we can defend British assets. Richard, they're saying back in 2022 we had a 42 degree here Celsius. Yes, I mean, you do need to be very careful of these things. Obviously, your body, so your body's homeostasis will need to maintain a core temperature of about 37 degrees. And the higher the external temperature, the harder that is. And certainly once the temperature gets, I mean, if it gets to the point where it's actually warmer than internal body temperature, then it's really struggling and your body has to work very hard. And that's why elderly people will struggle, because your body has to work harder. Your heart has to work harder. Your various systems have to work harder to maintain a cooler temperature the warmer it is. And it is literally the case. You know, 1 extra degree can make the difference. Like, the difference between a temperature of 30 degrees and 31 degrees does mean more people die. And statistically, we know that. But there we go. Brad, they're saying, last point this will have to be, because there's only half-hour ones. Someone pointed out that continuing the war in Gaza isn't just helping Netanyahu retain power, but when the war ends, the death toll count and reconstruction will be very damaging for Israel. This has been my argument from the start. Netanyahu's motivation is obvious. He wants to stay out of prison. Yes, we understand that sections of his government are also raging lunatics. And we also understand, for example, that I mean, I said last week in a video, Iran and Israel both have a shared paranoia. They believe everyone is out to destroy them. And yeah, there are some groups who want to destroy them. Yeah, there are some groups. But, I mean, Israel particularly, like Iran, you can understand their paranoia because they basically have no friends. Like Russia and China sort of, but they're not really friends of theirs. Whereas Israel have got very powerful allies. You know, so Israel's paranoia is mad. But yeah, my argument has very much been, there's got to come a point where the world sees what's happened. Like, I mean, we're already getting reports out, right? But there's got to come a point. And there's got to come a point where people look at it and they can't deny what's happened. And Netanyahu's old. He may not be around when the world has to face up to it. But every generation always faces up to the failings every generation faces up to the failings of the previous generation. Like, it's really easy for people to openly be critical of what people that weren't them did. So, yeah, there's going to come a generation that looks back on this. And Israel, Netanyahu only has to survive, what, another 10 years or so, maybe? I mean, he looks in good health, but he's old, right? Maybe he's only got another 10 years on this world. But the Israeli state wants to live another 100 years at least, doesn't it? And I don't understand how they think that's going to happen if they're basically committing atrocities on this scale. And look, I mean, even in America, public opinion is hugely pro-Israel, massively, blindly pro-Israel. And yet public opinion's turning. And you just think to yourself, there's going to come a point where the older generations sort of supporting mindless tribalism fall away, and what's going to happen to the nature of American politics? And if American politics fundamentally changes, if Israel loses its automatic defences, it's knackered. It's absolutely knackered. Anyway, Mark, just last point there says, thanks for that. My own view is that describing them as terrorists is ludicrous in comparison with so many groups that are not. But I was interested to hear your view. Yeah, all I can say is actually legally, it's not what my understanding of terrorism was, but legally, yeah, actually, it sounds reasonable as long as, because it could be tested in court at the end of the day. It can be tested in court, but if it counts as serious criminal damage, and the government believes that the only way to stop them committing further serious criminal damage is to prescribe them, actually they legally can. You say if Palestine Action are terrorists, so is Banksy. No, because people are quite happy with what Banksy's done. Like if the UK government and the Ministry of Defence were going, oh brilliant, you've knackered one of our engines, great, we wanted a new one anyway, then it wouldn't be criminal damage, because it can only be criminal damage if the owner of the property objects, and they never do with a Banksy. So it's not, it could be, granted, graffiti can be criminal damage, although I will also say it wouldn't be classed as serious criminal damage. Paint on a wall wouldn't, because paint on a wall doesn't damage the wall. So you don't actually damage a wall. So there's no way it would be classed as serious criminal damage. So under no circumstances would it be the case that Banksy is a terrorist. He could be a vandal, but he's not, because people like his work. But there we go. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks for coming on, everyone. I'm going to turn my computer off so this room can cool down for a moment. Have a great rest of the day. Do stay safe. Do please check on people who are vulnerable. Remember, people with serious health conditions, particularly if it affects their heart, elderly people, very young, like babies, toddlers, are all at risk. Please look after them. And until next time, I'll see you later.